Daniel, chapter 1. Daniel, which means God, Yahweh, El, is my judge. Daniel is a prophet revered in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, although not mentioned by name in the Quran, and the Baha'i faith. And this is not that video, but there is only one God, Elohim, and there is only one way. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man enters into the kingdom but by me. So, I've met some of those Baha'i faith people. They're a little weird. And the radical Muslims would cut your head off given the opportunity. And the Yahudim are missing the truth of Mashiach, and the Christians are missing the truth of the Torah. So, read the Bible and do what it says. Daniel, the scholarly interpretation of the book of Daniel, most scholars, biblical scholars, believe that there's two different portions to Daniel, the first portion and the second portion. The first portion of Daniel, the first several books, refers to Daniel in the third person and is believed not to be written by the prophet Daniel, but to be a collection of stories about Daniel. There's also some trepidation, some disagreement as to how many Daniels there were. Some will tell you one Daniel, some will tell you three Daniels. Not to be confused with the Ugaritic Daniel of the land of Canaan, approximately 1,200 years before this Daniel, that stories of whom probably existed down to the time of Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and that's how others in the Hebrew faith became aware of Daniel. Maybe. But anyway, the first portion of Daniel is written in the third person, whereas the second portion of Daniel is written more as a narrative in the first person, and that is believed to be by the hand of the prophet Daniel. And some people say that this book was written contemporarily in the 6th century BCE, during the time of the Babylonian captivity. And there are others who say that this book is written about 200 BCE, 400 years later, as a collection of stories about the time during the Babylonian captivity. In other words, from a biblical scholarship standpoint, there's not a consensus about A, how many Daniels there were, and B, when it was written. Cheers. You can do some more digging on that if you like. We are going to continue to lean upon the doctrine of inerrancy codified in 1977, which essentially says, let the Bible interpret the Bible, because every word of the Bible, not just from Matthew chapter 1 and forward, every word of the Bible is divinely inspired by Yahweh, your Elohim, the Lord our God. And so, with that, be it Yah's will, we'll do Daniel chapter 1 today. Kind of ease our way into Daniel. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, who was king of Judah. Okay, so this is the Jewish king of the tribe of Judah. Not to be confused with the house of Israel or modern day rabbinic Judaism based upon the Babylonian Talmud today, which is why Messiah rebukes the churches in Revelation. Return to your first love. Yeah, the Torah of Moses. Why does he tell the Pharisees and the Sadducees, if you knew Moses, you'd know me, but you don't know Moses, so you don't know me? Yeah, because what they were teaching, the Pharisees and the Sadducees of the day, during the time, 1st century AD-ish, right around the year 30 AD, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, was not what Moshe taught. It was what the rabbis were teaching, as influenced by the Babylonian captivity. Newsflash, the Babylonians were pagan. Yeah, as we'll see here in the book of Daniel. And then, of course, you get into, you look at Luke 24, And Messiah is talking to Cleophas after the resurrection, and he points to all the Torah and the prophets. Messiah points to what? All the Torah and the prophets, talking about the verses, the passages that spoke of him. Then, of course, you have this strange thing that happens in Deuteronomy 18, I believe that it is. I know, we haven't even read a word of Daniel yet. It's okay. So, Matthew, Mark, Luke 24. And, what is it? Yeah, Deuteronomy 18, verses 15 through 22. Deuteronomy 18, verses 15 through 22. Moses speaking, Yahweh your Elohim shall raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brothers. Listen to him. Mashiach, Messiah. According to all that you asked of Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb in the day of the assembly, the day that the Torah was given, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yahweh my Elohim, nor let me see this great fire any more, lest I die. And Yahweh said to me, what they have spoken is good. I shall raise up for them a prophet like you out of the midst of their brothers. And I shall put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. What words? Capital W words in the Old Testament in the context of Moses speaking, relating the words of Yahweh your Elohim. Do you suppose, what words were these that were put in the mouth of Mashiach? They weren't the epistles of Paul. Not that I have anything against Shaul of Tarsus, the apostle Paul, but my point is, he's talking about the Torah. Capital W words. And that's an interesting thing too, isn't it? The capital W word. The word made flesh. What's the word? Go read Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 22. And I shall put my words, capital W words, in his, capital H, prophet Yeshua's mouth, and he shall speak all that I command him. My doctrine is not my own, but he who sent me, says Messiah. And it shall be, the man who does not listen to my words which he speaks in my name, I require it of him. Judgment, Revelation 19. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name which I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other mighty ones, even that prophet shall die. And when you say in your heart, how do we know the word which Yahweh has not spoken? When the prophet speaks in the name of Yahweh and the word is not, or comes to naught, that is the word which Yahweh has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptively. Do not be afraid of him. Do not be afraid of him. The Hebrew connotation of fear is to deeply respect. And the reason I bring this up is there's a lot of people out there who claim to have a word from God, and it never comes to pass. Do not respect that person. Elsewhere in the Torah, it says hit him with a rock. So be very careful when people have said, I have a word from God. Well, does it jive with the word from God that we've already gotten? If the answer is no, you're a false prophet. If you say this thing is going to come to pass one time in the name of God, and it doesn't, that's a false prophet. Don't respect that person. Doctrine of inerrancy, what does the Bible say? So, back to the book of Daniel. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And Yahweh gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the utensils of the house of Elohim, which he, Nebuchadnezzar, brought to the land of Shinar, to the house of his mighty one, his false god. And he brought the utensils into the treasure house of the mighty one. Now, I was reading this with my wife yesterday, and she goes like, utensils, like what, spatulas? And we had a good laugh. I said, no, baby, the utensils of the house of Elohim, the temple. And she's like, all right, what is that? Remember, these things were built to be portable. Okay, we can read about this in the second half of Exodus. And the pattern that was shown to Moshe, which was then repeated here on earth, shown by Yah to Moshe, then built by Betzalel, son of Uri, and etc. They're designed to be portable. What are they? The slaughter place of incense, the slaughter place for the burnt offerings, the menorah, the table for the showbread. There were shovels, utensils, and bowls of gold and silver, and the Ark of the Covenant. Some of the utensils. These are the utensils of the house of Yahweh. I have some of the utensils underlined in verse 2 in my Bible. Because where is the Ark of the Covenant? We don't know. And see, the Babylonians were pretty keen on writing things down and inscribing them on clay tablets. And they wrote down the stuff that they took when they raided the house of Elohim. Which, by the way, how far does your society have to fall where you believe in Yahweh your Elohim, allegedly? Go read 1 Kings, 2 Kings. Allegedly believe in Yahweh. But here comes this invading army, and you allow them to destroy the temple and to loot the temple? No. Where were all the men? We were just talking about in Ezekiel, it's the prince's job to protect the temple, to protect the people. So the temple was raided by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and they took some of the utensils. Listed in the Babylonian clay tablets is not the Ark of the Covenant. Where did the Ark go? Well, if you have the answer to that, congratulations, you're a cajillionaire at this point. But probably the most believable theory that I've seen, not that it matters, because that's not really what we're talking about here, but is that Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, secreted the ark away and hid it. And that it was probably later recovered after that time. There's the copper scroll of Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's a literal treasure map, lists multiple dozens of sites, locations where stuff that was secreted away from the temple was hidden. Many of which have not been excavated because they're sensitive sites geopolitically these days. But the ark, according to Babylonian clay tablets, was not amongst the things that were taken from the temple. We don't know where it is today. And the king said to Ashpenaz, the chief of his eunuchs, this being Nebuchadnezzar, said to Ashpenaz, to bring some of the children of Israel, and some of the kings, Jehoiakim's descendants, and some of the nobles of the house of Judah. Young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, having insight in all wisdom, having knowledge and understanding, learning, capable to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the writing and speech of the Kasdim. So, the Babylonians had a tradition where they would take members of the ruling class and the best, most educated people and assimilate them into their culture to strengthen the Babylonian culture. So they had the most beautiful, the smartest, the most politically connected people assimilated into their culture. There's something to that. And here in the end of verse 4, teach them the writing and speech of the Kasdim. Who were the Kasdim? Kasdim is a word that comes from the Chaldees, or which will mean the Chaldeans, and it's used to mean two different things. The people group of the Kasdim, the Chaldeans. Remember, Abraham and his daddy Terach are from Kasdim, the Chaldees, Aramea. Okay, so it's a people group that is part of the Babylonian Empire, but it also refers to a particular type of people inside of this people group, because what they were known for, the Kasdim, the Chaldeans, in context of the court of Nebuchadnezzar, where they were the astrologers, the mathematicians, the magicians, the wise ones, the magi, if you will. I'm just saying, possibly, we don't know who the three magi, the three wise men were who came to visit Mashiach when he was born. They come to King Herod and they say, hey, we're looking for the king. And this being in the New Testament and the Gospels. And Herod says, congratulations, you found him, I'm the king. And they say, no, we mean the real king. And Herod does a, what? And that's when the order goes out to kill all the Hebrew babies. Remember that? Those three, is it possible that those three, as we're going to see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and we see there's a man walking with them in the fire who has the appearance as the son of Elohim. The son of Elohim, Yeshua. Is it possible that these three, these archetypes of the wise men, the Kasdim, who were assimilated into the Babylonian system, reappear later in the story? This archetype of the three wise men coming and paying their dues back to one who has the appearance of the son of Elohim to bless him. And then you look at what they bring. Bring gold. Everybody needs gold. They bring myrrh. What is myrrh? It's a pain reliever, antimicrobial. If you just had a baby in a barn, you'd probably want some pain relief and some antibiotics, antimicrobials, right? Incense and gold and myrrh. Yeah. What's the incense for? Well, we just talked about the slaughter place of incense and the worship of Elohim. Just throwing that out there. Possible tertiary connections. So the Kasdim in verse 4, these are the people group of the Chaldeans, but more pointedly, these are the astrologers, mathematicians, magicians, the magi, the learned ones of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. And the king, verse 5, Nebuchadnezzar, appointed for them a daily ration, appointed for them, those who were brought from Judah, a daily ration of the king's food and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them. So at the end of thereof they should stand before the king. So here's food, here's wine, here's training, so you'll be fit to stand in the presence of the king of Babylon. Now among them were from the sons of Judah. Now here's some of the people who were taken from the tribe of Judah in the Babylonian exile. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names, for he called Daniel Belteshazzar, and Hananiah Shadrach, and Mishael Meshach, and Azariah Abednego. But Daniel laid it upon his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's food, nor with the wine which he drank. So he asked permission from the chief of the eunuchs not to defile himself. Now, defile is a very specific term, especially in the Old Testament. What does the word defile tell us about the king's food? First, it's unclean. Daniel is a prophet from the house of Judah. He's a Jew. He's not going to eat swine. He's not going to eat unclean food, or food that was slaughtered not in a clean way. It might be a goat, but if the blood wasn't drained from it, it wasn't killed per what people would call kosher protocol today, which even then there's some Talmudic rabbinic traditions in that are extra biblical. But it's not clean, and he's not going to defile himself. And the wine. See, there was allegedly, the tradition here was that the king would be presented this giant feast. And then the king would participate in this blessing over the feast that involved drinking wine from human skulls and praying to Babylonian false gods over this air quote food that was not clean, not per Leviticus 11. And then the Babylonian gods slaughtered to idols, Shaul of Tarsus, anybody, would bless the food. Then the king would partake, and then everybody else would partake. Daniel was like, hey, so happy to be here. By the way, we're not going to participate in that because Yahweh, our Elohim, says that's not cool. We don't want to do that. And Elohim granted Daniel love and commitment and compassion from the chief of the eunuchs. But the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my master the king who has appointed your food and drink. Why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? then you would make my head guilty before the king. Hey, if you guys don't eat, you're going to look like crap. The king's going to notice you looking like crap, then I'm going to get in trouble. And Daniel said to the overseer, whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Daniel and his homies, please, try your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearances be examined before you, and the appearances of the young men who eat the portion of the king's food, and do with your servants as you see fit. And he, the overseer, listened to them in this matter, and he tried them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their appearance looked better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's food. And it came to be that the overseer took away their portion of food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables. He's like, all right, hey, this is working. Praise Yah, this is working. You guys can eat vegetables, drink water, instead of drinking the wine and defiled food of the king, because you guys look better than anybody else around here, so I'm probably not going to get into any trouble. There's a lot of hay made here about the piety and polity of Daniel, and that he said, hey, please, let us just drink water and eat vegetables, and if that doesn't work after 10 days, then we'll defile ourselves. And so rather than saying, no, we're not going to do that, Daniel negotiated with them. And maybe there was an element of Daniel being pious and politicking real well here. I also think it has a lot to do with the power dynamic. Your city's just been destroyed. You've been taken and displaced. You're severely outnumbered. You are in the care of the king. You're not one to be making demands. So, hey, please, could we try this out? And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I think there's more of that going on here. But it is illustrative of Daniel's faith in Yah. We'll eat vegetables, we'll drink water, and we'll be more fit and better looking than anybody else around here because we're not going to defile ourselves. I'm totally on board with that. And as for these 4 young men, Daniel and Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah, as for these 4 young men, Elohim gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. Almost sounds like they read the book of Proverbs. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Patterns of Joseph here in the book of Genesis. The end of Genesis, the story of Joseph, the son of Yisrael, of Jacob. And at the end of the days, when the king said that they should be brought in at the end of 3 years, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, and none among them were found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they stood before the king. And in any word of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians, the astrologers, the Chazdim, who were in his reign. And Daniel continued until the 1st year of King Koresh. And we'll let that be there for today in Daniel chapter 1, kind of laying the groundwork before we get into this vision in Daniel chapter 2, which needs to be its own standalone video because it's considerable. In the meanwhile, homework, read the book of Daniel, please. It's important. It's one of, if not the most quoted books of the Bible of the Old Testament by Messiah. It's deeply prophetic. And do some tertiary investigation of who Daniel was, and that will inform the conversation when we get to Daniel chapter 2, talking about the reigns that come after King Nebuchadnezzar and his vision of the head of gold and the feet of clay and iron, and who is that, and there's a messianic prophecy in that as well. So, Daniel chapter 1. I appreciate y'all very much. Have a blessed day. Shalom.